Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the general public. As always, good evening to the wonderful people here in Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those who are listening in the wider Caribbean. Good evening to friends and family in the United States and Canada, those in the United Kingdom, wherever you are, good evening. And welcome to another edition of On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and I'll be here with you, God willing, until 10 p.m. this evening. As always, we offer 2 hours of commercial-free talk radio every Wednesday from 8 until 10 p.m. And we thank all of you who have been with us all of these years, who tune in, who call in, who make this show what it is. Thank you truly for being a part of the On The Mark family right here on VON Radio. For those who are tuned in, we are streaming live, of course, on Facebook. We're streaming live on YouTube. And some do it the old-fashioned way, listen to the radio. Well, we're at 860 on your AM dial. Some also listening via the World Wide Web. And so we welcome you, whatever mode you're using to listen. This is On The Mark. And again, welcome. It's a beautiful night here in Nevis, of course, the first working day back after the Culturama 49 celebrations. We will, of course, when we open the lines, invite your opinions on the celebrations this year. I have had mixed reviews, but mostly good, that revelers had a good time, and thank God for His mercy that we had an event-free Culturama. No crime, no criminality, no violence of any kind. We did have a very unfortunate accident involving one of the bands on the road with the trailer running off the road right there on the Port Road close to Value Mart area. And we are happy that there were no fatalities, and of course extend our sympathies to those who were injured. I'm advised by the authorities that we had 5 people treated at our hospital, one with some broken bones. I think both legs were broken, 2 others with broken arms, and the other 2 had scratches and bruises. But it could have been so much worse. And so to those who were injured, I extend my sympathies to you. I extend my hope and prayer that you will recover quickly. And I am truly grateful to God that this was not a more serious incident in the sense of fatalities, because we all know what could have happened had this crushed persons or had this vehicle and trailer got away in the crowd. And so God is good. We thank Him for His mercy, and we are very grateful that other than that incident, we had a very good Culturama. The rain held up, the weather held up, and I believe that all had a good time. I myself used the opportunity to rest and to recharge. I know many people called me and said they didn't see me on the road on the long jam as usual, and I did apologize, but I wasn't 100%, and I thought it was an opportunity for me to take some rest and to recharge, knowing that we have the final half of the year, so to speak, and we're trying to finish strong here for our first year back in government after the elections of December of last year. And so I would really want to hear from folks out there when the lines open as to how you see Culturama. But let me take the opportunity to first of all congratulate the Honorable Eric Evelyn, our Deputy Premier and Minister of Culture. I believe he is Mr. Culture himself, and he embodies all that is good and great about us in terms of our culture, our dance, our music. Eric is there. I believe he played masquerades. I teased him about not being able to get down in terms of the limbo, but certainly he was part of that, and he immerses himself in our culture in a very real way. And so we thank Eric Evelyn for his steadfast leadership in the Ministry of Culture. We thank his entire team, his prominent secretary, and the entire team, Abernathy Liebert, who has been a fixture in the Culturama Secretariat, for his guidance and direction over all these years, and all of the volunteers. I think that people out there need to realize that Culturama ultimately is staged by people who are volunteering. I want to emphasize that, because many people are quick to criticize, many people are quick to point out all of the shortcomings, but we see very few people who are willing to step forward. And I saw a very poignant comment made on social media where one commentator said, you know, so many people criticize the revelers, but they criticize them from the sidelines because they themselves aren't joining any troops. They themselves aren't involved in any way. So they're in the troop of criticizers. That's what they do. They come out to criticize. They don't come out to revel. They don't come out to have fun. And really, they don't contribute as much as they could if they had decided to participate. And I think that's a very powerful statement that was made by this observer. And not a political statement, because there's no politics in it. I don't think there should be any politics in our culture. But a very strong statement. A very strong statement because, ladies and gentlemen, the culture is really only as good as we make it. The Culturama celebration is only as good as we make it. And I marvel every year that there are more people as bystanders than as participants. And we understand that this is and has become a part of the tapestry, if you will, of Nivision life. And the criticisms come fast and furious. You know, I hear people saying, oh, the cultural complex needs this, it needs, you know, the benches are too hard, there's not enough cover, you know, the contestants are this, them not look good, them not sound good, the band this show start late. There are constant complaints. We can do better, don't get me wrong. And constructive criticism is always worthwhile because it forces us to improve. But how much better would it be for so many of you who have the answers to step forward and participate, rather than simply sitting back, criticizing and complaining and pointing out how foolish everyone else is? And that, I think, can be applied to our Culturama, as it can be applied to so many other things that we do on this island. Our sport, our government, so much of what we do, our community groups. How can we better this island? How can we make it the best island state in the world? How can we make St. Kitts and Nevis the best place to live and to work and to do business? It requires all of our efforts. And if one half of the population is only inclined to criticize and cuss the other half, then where are we going? So I think that we need, if you will, an awakening of sorts. We will celebrate the 50th anniversary of Culturama next year. We have already indicated that we want it to be a homecoming celebration as well. We know that there were many family reunions for this Culturama, and we're hopeful that next year there will be even more. That our people will come home in their numbers from wherever they happen to be. Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Virgin Islands, all across the Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands, wherever they might be, that they will come. That our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts will come as usual. And that next year for Culturama 50, we will have a celebration fitting of the 50th anniversary of this effort started way back to preserve our culture. It's a noble effort, not started by government, let me make that clear, but started by a group called NEDAX and by stalwarts of that culture. I was particularly happy to see Irma Johnson out and about. She was my school teacher, but she was one of those early founding members. She and others saw the wisdom in creating something that is now celebrating 50 years next year. And we say thank you to them. Cabo Howell, Irma Johnson, and so many others. It is important that we recognize their contribution and that we continue to build on it. And the reason I say it was not started by government is because today it seems that so many of us feel that everything is the government's responsibility. Sometimes I marvel that if somebody wakes up in the morning and their leg hurts, they feel the government is responsible for that. Or it is the government's responsibility to stop their leg from hurting. If rain doesn't come, if the sun is too hot, every single thing that happens, somehow it's for the government to handle. I have told a story before that one day I got a call from a constituent who said to me that there had been high winds and that a kusha tree, as we call it here, had been blown down and was across his driveway from his house, preventing him from accessing and egressing his house as he would like. And I said, yes, and why are you calling me about that? And he said to me, well, you need to send someone to remove the tree from across my driveway. And I said to him, well, you mean to tell me the tree's across your driveway, you can't take your cutlass and go and remove the tree? And I found it quite interesting that it had not occurred to him that he could use his own efforts. The government must hire somebody to send somebody to clear the tree from the driveway. And after I said that to him, he said, oh yeah, I could do that. And I suppose he went ahead and did it. But it, for me, captured how far removed we have come from the days of DDAX and the days of community individuals and community-minded individuals seeing a need and deciding to come together to satisfy that need. Look across this island of Nevis now. Think about the clubs. St. John's Improvement Club. What was it called? SJCIC. I remember when I was a youngster, that was one of the biggest clubs here. Clubs like the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, various community groups. And you look around and you ask yourself, what has happened? The people now have a sense that they will not lift a finger unless they're being paid. I walk sometimes, I see garbage on the sides of the street, sometimes right outside people's homes. I'm not saying they put it there, but it's there. And I wonder, but when they step outside their homes, don't they think that, listen, I could get a bag and just pick up this trash because it makes the area look bad? No, instead I get a call, oh, garbage all the way around the neighborhood up here, send somebody to pick it up. Or hire somebody to clean it. And I think that we need to recognize that much of what has made Nevis great over the years has not really been government per se. Government perhaps has supported, but the ideas and the impetus and the energy has really come from the community. And so when I see Culturama, I see an effort that is uniquely Nevisian. No government dictated that Culturama would come. It wasn't a function of any brainchild of any government. It came from the community. It came from individuals in the community who saw the need, put it together. And here we are today, 50 years next year, we will celebrate Culturama. I believe that is a wonderful lesson for us, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to rekindle that spirit of our communities doing more, of our people stepping forward and being willing to contribute their time and their effort, our people being willing to donate to worthy causes and to help. Not everybody saying, go call the government, go call the minister, but for us to be willing to assist where we can. Sometimes I look and I remind myself that the cabinet, 3 elected members, 2 nominated members, a cabinet secretary, and a legal advisor. 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 2 is 7. That's it. Can 7 people alone run this island, do everything on this island, know everything on this island, see everything on this island? Of course not. We need our people to engage. And this notion that I will not lift a finger unless somebody is paying me, we need to get past that and get back to a Nevis where we looked out for each other, we looked out for our communities, and not everything was driven by money. And so, Culturama is really our festival. And it is good or bad based on what we invest in it, what we put into it. And I invite all of our stakeholders, our troops, our bands, our folklorists, all of our stakeholders, to step forward in a very positive way for Culturama 50. That will be the big one. And I invite all of those who are listening, I know we have a large listenership in the diaspora, to start looking at flights now so that you can be here for Culturama 50 next year. I hope the Culturama committee is going to get out of the gates quickly, do the post-mortem on this one, see how we can learn from it, and so that they can articulate what needs they have going forward for Culturama 50. I thank the sponsors that came on board this year in a major way, and there were several of those. And I am grateful to all of them, particularly those private sector establishments that step forward in a significant way to be part of Culturama this year. I'm hopeful that they will stay on board with us for Culturama 50, and that whatever they gave this year would be even bigger next year as we try to do a fabulous festival for the people of Nevis. Again, kudos to those who won, to those who competed, to all the kings and queens, to the bands, to the revelers, to those behind the scenes, to the tireless workers. And let me, in the context of work, single out those individuals who, the day after the parade, had Charlestown spick and span. People marvel and say, how could Charlestown be so clean the day after? And it is because of the dedication of a small cadre of persons who take their work seriously. And I say kudos to them that we went back to work today. And if you didn't know, you couldn't tell that this island was all about color and splendor and mass just yesterday, because today was an ordinary day here on the island of Nevis. So again, congratulations to all. Thank you to all, and to the security forces, to everyone. It was a fascinating celebration of our culture, and we look forward certainly to bigger and better celebration to mark our 50th anniversary next year. Moving quickly along, it has been hot. In fact, across the globe they are recording record temperatures. This, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, is the manifestation of what many of us have been talking about in fora across the world, the manifestation of climate change. Oceans are getting hotter. Summers are getting hotter. Weather conditions are getting harsher. And the hotter the world gets, the more susceptible we become to violent storms, hurricanes, and the like. We, of course, continue to pray that God will spare us this year. We pray that He will spare our entire region from the ravages of storms. But each year, we wait with bated breath, on bended knee, with our faces turned to God, because that is the only protection that we have. And each year, our region becomes more and more vulnerable, while we continue to make the necessary entreaties and the necessary arguments in the capitals of the world, at the United Nations and elsewhere, seeking to have those who are most responsible for this phenomenon called climate change to spend the money to make amends. It is the developed nations of the world that have benefited. It is they that have grown rich from exploiting the resources of the world. It is they who are responsible for polluting the world to such an extent that we here now in the Caribbean, and more specifically those of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis who have contributed nothing to this problem, find ourselves in every sense on the front lines of this difficulty. And so when now you go out and you say it is intolerably hot, and we recognize that temperatures are soaring across the world to the point where in some areas of the world we are being told that the temperatures make it uninhabitable. Just today I saw something where a parliamentarian in the UK was saying that areas in France and Italy were being reduced to desert. I saw an article recently which suggested that there are areas in Europe where the temperature had been changing to such a degree that it was becoming more like Africa than like Europe. We are living in a very serious time, and I believe that the world needs to wake up to this reality. Yes, there has been a statement here or there. Yes, there have been commitments, financial commitments made, pledges of billions of dollars. But has that money materialized? The answer is really, it has not. That sometimes when money is pledged, the requirements to access that money are so severe that many of us find ourselves incapable of getting access to those funds. And that has been our reality. And so, as the place heats up, it has another impact here on us, and that Nevis has seen dramatically reduced rainfall over the course of the last several years. Less rainfall means that our aquifers from which we access most water are not being replenished, at a sufficient rate to maintain the level of extraction of water. I know, I empathize with, and I understand the frustration that many of us have felt over the past few months, and even including the Culturama season, that we were without water. Our professionals at the Water Department have been working tirelessly under the leadership of the Honorable Spencer Brand to try to find solutions to this problem. It is not a problem that is easily resolved. And I have often said to the public that my style of leadership is to be open. I have nothing to hide. The business that we are involved in is service to the public. And we can't serve a public and hide from the same public. That is why I come here on a Wednesday. That is why I open the lines and say that I'm willing to take calls. That is why I know that no other leader in our region has done this with the consistency that I have done it. Because I believe fervently that my task is to serve you, and in serving you, I have to be open and honest with you at all times. This is not my business, it is your business. The water situation here on the island is a difficult situation. Most of our water comes from aquifers or groundwater. Water comes from wells. And many of those wells have been pumping now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at rates that really are unsustainable. Our experts at the Water Department have repeatedly sounded the alarm that we are extracting water much faster than that water is being replenished. The problem has been exacerbated by climate change, hotter temperatures, lower rainfalls. And so we are forced to grapple with the situation where our population is growing, our business community is expanding, and our people have grown accustomed to water in abundance, to the point where we waste it. Let's face that, because that is true. We waste lots of water here on the island of Nevis. There's lots of water that is not recoverable. We have rainfall. When it does come, much of that goes off into the ocean. And even our people who are asked to build cisterns with their homes, water catchment areas, some of them have built cisterns and I was shocked to learn have never connected them. So there's an empty space below their homes, but the necessary plumbing to ensure that the roof collected water goes into those cisterns, that has not happened. And so here we are. The government is being asked to find solutions, and of course the buck stops with the government. I accept that. But the people must also be responsible. And part of being responsible is conserving this very precious resource, not wasting water, not having leaks and the like and not reporting them or dealing with them for months on end. I sometimes, in walking around the community, I see pipes that are leaking. And I marvel that people living in the community don't seem to mind. No report is made. And I believe that we all have a responsibility. Water, like electricity, is a necessity. And we know there's nothing more frustrating than turning on the tap and not finding any water there. And so we must now, all of us together, find solutions. Your role as members of the public is to conserve, to be responsible in your use of this precious resource. Our role as government is to try to find more water and to try to lead the charge in terms of educating our people in the reasonable and responsible use of this resource. Your role is to pay for the water that you consume, because that payment then allows the government the ability to deliver a more effective service to you. Your role, to cooperate with the authorities, to report leaks where they exist, not to waste water in different ways that we find, not to pilfer water, to do your own thing, but really to ensure that we act responsibly. You hear me using that word a lot, that we act responsibly. The cabinet had some years ago made a significant down payment to a company called Bead. And that down payment was for the drilling of some wells here on the island of Nevis. The intention from that was for us to source additional water. Regrettably, Bead collected our money but never did the work. And so we find ourselves now in court with Bead. We are hopeful that we gather there now in St. Kitts doing some work over there, and that we can use all levers available to us to get them to finally honor their commitment to the people of Nevis. Having said that, we're also looking at more precise data in terms of water and how and where we can drill. And so this government has just expended some funds to hire a chap called Skip Hogue. He's an engineer, water expert, and he has come. And Mr. Hogue, who is no stranger to the island because he had done a mapping before, is now coming with new technology to give us some areas that we can drill with a greater degree of specificity. I'm advised by Minister Brand that Mr. Hogue has identified an area in Dason's estate. He has identified an area in Braziers, and he has identified one other area. If you bear with me, I will check quickly because I got the message as I was on my way here. But Dason's estate, to be sure, Braziers estate as well, and the last area that was identified, and I'll give it to you shortly because I like, as I say, to have accurate information if I can find it. But that last area to drill was Stony Hill. So Dason Estate, Stony Hill, and Braziers. Those three areas have been identified, and apparently the technology now is that they've actually put down stakes to suggest exactly where the drilling should occur. Now, I'm of the view that more drilling and going into our aquifers in different parts of the island could only be a short to medium term solution. If climate change continues unabated, until such time as we can see a reversal of the damage done to the environment, I suspect that we will continue to have shortages of rainfall or drought conditions. If those continue, then it is inevitable that the aquifers will not get the level of rain that it requires for recharge. And if that is the case, extracting more water from the aquifers just cannot be a long-term solution for the island of Nevis. I feel that the most sensible solution will be desalination, which isn't new. Desalination occurs all across the Caribbean already, as close by as St. Martin and Anguilla, as close by as St. Kitts, where I'm told that the Marriott Resort has significant desalination at work there. The problem we've had with desalination is that it is a very expensive process of producing water. It is expensive because it requires taking salt water from the ocean and removing the salt from that water to make it potable, and that in turn requires equipment that is powered by electricity. Because the cost of electricity has proven prohibitive, it means that we'll have to pass on those costs to the consumer. In fact, as a government, we've had various proposals for desalination from private developers who want to come in and set up desalination plants on the basis that the government will buy the water from them. The difficulty is that we would perhaps have to multiply the current rates by a margin of a multiplier of maybe 10 if we are able to afford that water. And so you're paying now $13 domestic users for 1,000 gallons. Imagine if now you had to pay $130 for 1,000 gallons. And so we have been grappling with that. We feel in the long term that that is the solution. And we are optimistic as we look at the development of the island, that the development of our geothermal energy, which promises to give us energy at a fraction of the current cost, that will be the time for us to move wholesale to desalination to supply the needs of the island. And so we have the plan, but plans take time. And we're having to take our time because we have not had the resources to execute in relation to all that we need to do. And so I want to say all that to say to the public that you have a government that is thoughtful. You have a government that is seeking to find solutions to real problems. And in doing so, sometimes people say that perhaps I'm unkind when I say to ignore the noise. But all of us who grew up in Nevis know that you cannot get up the hill if you stop to kick at every barking dog. You can't get up the hill. So sometimes you just have to ignore and keep your focus. In a laser-like way, you're trying to get up the hill, one foot in front of the next, you keep your face upwards, you keep moving forwards. Because if you stop at every distraction and at every noise, you will never get up. In fact, you might forget where you were trying to go. And that is important, and this government has adopted that as an approach, that we listen, we record, of course, the concerns of our people, but there is a cohort within this island that if Jesus himself were to come down tomorrow and anoint this island even more than he has done, bless us even more than we have done, there'll be somebody who goes on radio to cuss Jesus. And if he came and he gave every man, woman, and child on this island $1 million, you can be certain there'll be somebody to say why he couldn't give two. Because we have a cohort of individuals who that appears to be their purpose in life. And I mean no discourtesy when I say this, but when I look at these same individuals who are full of criticism for all the rest of us, who know and understand everything and have the solution to every problem, except that in their own lives you have not seen any signs of success. For the large part, they are unemployed, and some may argue unemployable. They have done nothing. They have the ability to speak, and they use the tongue, the power of the tongue, to criticize and to condemn, to create mayhem and mischief. But at the end of the day, they contribute absolutely nothing to this island. And I say so because it is true. I have heard, for example, the argument being advanced that we need more employment and that young people need work. It is a valid argument. I am all in favor of more work and more young people. But those, if you realize, who are making that argument are not themselves working, and they are not themselves trying to create anything for a young person to benefit from. Many tout their education and their degrees, their doctorates and their MBAs and their masters and their bachelors, their long years of experience in all manner of things. But you ask them the simple question, what value are you adding to the community? I was in the squares. They have poets in the square, and by the way, I thank those who organized it, because they invited the members of cabinet to recite poetry, and I thought it was a very good thing. I don't recall since first form in high school that I've ever recited a poem in public, so it was for me a coming out party of sorts. And we had some excellent pieces done by members of cabinet who wrote their own pieces in some cases. And we had the poets in the square, and I was feeling a little hot because the days are hot. And I got up from where I sat and I went down, and there was a local lady. And you know what she was selling? Freco. You know what Freco is? Freco is this crushed ice with syrup, different flavored syrups. As children, we well remember a cart coming around and the person scraping the ice, packing it into a container and putting that stuff on it, that sweet stuff, and we loved it. I had not had a Freco in so many years. And when I got the Freco from the lady, I smiled. You know why? Because I don't know that that lady has any PhD or any MBA or any whatever. That lady is not telling you that she has the solutions to solve all of Nevis's problems. That lady is not on radio every day and night cussing. But she's in the square because she realizes the place hot. This ice thing here could cool people down. Let me go and make $1. And that is, to me, the fundamental difference between those who talk and those who do. We have a lot of people out there who talk. You ever go to a game? Regardless of the game. Cricket is a big sport here. The man in the pavilion is the man who's doing the most talking. He knows what shot should be played. He knows how the bowler should attack. He knows whether the wicket is taking spin, whether the bowler is giving enough flight or bounce. He knows how the field should be set. He cusses the captain for not setting the field properly. He knows who should be in the team. He knows it all, except that he is not playing. He is not volunteering to play. He is not volunteering to coach. He is not on any executive for the Cricket Association. His job is to criticize. And the sooner that we recognize that in this country we have some individuals whose job it is to criticize, not to add value, not to find solutions, but to criticize. And some of our people, unfortunately, succumb to it. Succumb to it. We will join some people in saying nothing is happening in Nevis when we are benefiting from the tremendous economic activity happening in Nevis. Instead of saying to that person, well, maybe nothing is happening for you because you're not putting yourself in a position to benefit from what's going on. So I believe that, you see, some of them, that is their role. Criticizers in chief. And every week there is something. When they can't find somebody in government to cuss, they start to cuss their own. That is the NRP way. That is how they have always operated. And so somebody is responsible. Somebody should do this. Somebody should do that. That is always the cry. But what are they doing? And I challenge you, members of the public, because we all know each other. What are they doing? One of them, who claims all the training and knowledge in the world, the last I checked, he said he was growing passion fruit. Now, I believe that any kindergartner can grow passion fruit. It's one of the easiest things to grow. I am not understanding the relevance of that. Then somebody tell me the other day that he starting to boil rum. Well, If he's doing that, more power to him. But that is something that now competes with the traditional folks in Brownhill and Handley's Road and thing who do that to make a little living. And again, you ask the question, why is it these individuals who claim to know so much, who claim to have so much ability, that they can't translate that into something tangible that we could all see, that is helpful to the community? Another one talk and talk, bang him out, bang him out, bang him out. But for years his party has been seeking a candidate in Gingerland. And every time they say, man, you talk so good, you sound so good, you come now. He said, but not me. You're crazy, not me, I'm afraid. But he has the solutions. He knows everything. He understands everything. There's no better political pundit or strategist than he. But when this party calls and boy, I'm afraid you're crazy. Well, I have christened him Buster, and he will have that name until the day we all leave here. Because that was like my brown dog Buster. When Buster was tired, he barked hard. And so you think Buster is a bad dog, so you Lego Buster, and Buster run under the floor. And Buster really is no bad dog at all. Buster afraid. That is the reality. And you look at them one by one by one by one, and you start to say, well, you have the answers for everybody's life. But in your life, what are you doing? You now work, you now use all this experience to create nothing in the community for anybody else to benefit from. What are you doing other than cooping to get into government? To be given some position so you could get a salary. What are you doing in the meantime? And I tell this story, and I will tell it to the day that I die, of a former opponent of mine politically doing some house-to-house work and sitting at a bar over there in Prospect, talking to a young man, asked the youngster, are you employed? The youngster said no. And he then starts to tell the youngster of his job creation plan, that the youngster should vote for him because he has this plan to create hundreds of jobs in the community. The youngster took a sip of his Guinness, and the youngster said to him, but boss, me now work and you now work. So how come you got planned to find work for me when you can't find work for yourself? And just so the dance mash up. Just so the dance mash up. Because that is the reality of so many who constantly criticize. But when you look at them, you say, what are you offering? Because the criticism in and of itself, all of us can criticize, you know. Watch he, you see pants too tight, you see shoe them need cleaning. You see that they no match. You see here need cutting. Criticism is easy. But offering solutions and saying to people that we represent an alternative because here are our solutions. Here is our way and it is a better way. That has not been forthcoming. And so when I look at this government, we are a thoughtful government. So when we talk about solving the water problem, we understand that we will have to do more drilling in the short term. But that the long-term solution will have to involve geothermal power desalination plants. And that a combination of geothermal and desal will allow us to finally get the level of water on this island that we can then say we are safe. A sole reliance on water from our aquifers is not a sound strategy, given what climate change is doing to our rainfall patterns. And we understand this. And that is why we're working in tandem on different things. The airport. We're negotiating with the owners of lands in the area, and we're asking and imploring them to be reasonable. Some have thus far been willing to discuss reasonably. Others have, in our view, been unreasonable. But at the end of the day, this is important for Nevis's development. Some may ask, well, why are you bothering with an airport? It is important for our development as we complement what is happening on St. Kitts and as the two islands progress together. You see our geothermal project? The ultimate goal is to benefit the people of St. Kitts as well. I think our new Prime Minister, Prime Minister Drew, understands that, and that is why he has been supportive of the project. The airport project in Nevis ultimately benefits. Why? More airlift, more activity. The hotels benefit. When we go out now, when we try to attract more hotels to Nevis, we can tell them, listen, we have now direct flight coming out of Miami. Anguilla has just announced that there will be 2 per day for the new season coming out of Miami. Why not us? The airport facility in Anguilla is marginally, in terms of the runway, longer than us. And we know with what we are proposing to do, we can accommodate the same flights. I say all this to say that as a government, we are trying to move this island forward. Development doesn't happen overnight. It is not instantaneous. But as a government, we are seeking to do the job that we were elected to do. And on this water issue, we have a plan. On electricity generation, we have a plan. On airport and airlift and greater access to the island, we have a plan. On growing the economy, growing small businesses, greater safety nets for those that need them, we have plans. Our healthcare sector. Look around and you see that in every one of those areas, we have been working towards our plan, and that the people can see, if they're willing to see, that those plans are yielding benefits for them. I am happy that there were people home for Culturama. I am happy that they get to see firsthand what is happening on the island. One person rang me and they said that they went to the Malcolm Gishard Park and they could not believe the facility was first class. A park, they said, that was like any park they'd been to in more developed countries. And I said to them, yes, and we're working on other aspects of it now. And when it is all finished, we will have a first-class facility for leisure, for families to relax and come together, for events, to go out and dine. Pinnies is going to become the hub of entertainment here on the island of Nevis. That is our vision, and we are working towards that vision. And so we're saying to our people that the evidence is there, and the evidence is clear. In a democracy, you will have dissenting voices. That's understandable. But at the end of the day, let us put our shoulders to the wheel, and even where there are voices of dissent, let them then offer an alternative. Let them say to the government, you're proposing to do a boardwalk at Pinnies. We don't think that that boardwalk should be there. These are the reasons. We instead suggest that you do this. But constantly cussing, because that's really what it comes down to, doesn't help us all. And some of the cussers, they themselves are not qualified to tell anybody anything, because when they are examined, Dag and Hall has done better than them. Somebody said to me that one of them who making the most noise said, you know, when I reflect on that individual, their only success in life thus far has been failure. They have succeeded spectacularly at failing. And I said, my goodness, that is an interesting way to look at it. When your only success in life is failure, yet you are saying that you have all the answers for other people. How come you're not going to answer for yourself? How come? You're going out there lecturing a young man who's trying to do a small business and telling him, oh, something not working out for you, go cost the government. But you have never had a small business, so if you've ever had one, it has failed. You don't know what it's like to pay social security for anybody because your whole life you've been looking to government to pay for you. You've never employed someone, but yet you complain there's not enough employment in the country. Well, of what value are all these ideas that you have? Of what value is this education that you have? If you cannot then use it and translate it into something that adds value to the island of Nevis. If your only value is to talk, then everybody can do that. All of us can talk. So, what more? And that's why I say sometimes we ignore the noise. Stay focused. Stay focused on the goal, focus on the objectives, because you will never get up the hill if you kick at every barking dog. It's just not going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open the lines now and take some calls. The numbers are 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. While I wait for the phones to ring, let me say special commendations to the Honorable Alexis Jeffers and his team for a first-class event at Herbert's Beach again this year. A lot of hard work goes into that event, and I know that he and his team would have put in a tremendous level of work to get that venue up and running and to get it settled. And in fact, I think that most people should know that that event was being threatened. It was being threatened because there were some forces at work trying to buy that land from under the people of Nevis. And again, it was Alexis Jeffers who stepped in and said, no, the government should acquire that land for the benefit of generations yet unborn. And so when you see that Herbert's Beach affair happening, it is now happening on lands owned by the government. Yes, we are struggling to find the money to pay for it, but we will pay for it because this is a government that is responsible. But what is important, ladies and gentlemen, is that it required that foresight, that vision, and that love of people. Note what I said. He insisted it be acquired for the benefit of the people of St. James and the people of Nevis and generations to come. Not for himself. Not for himself. There's not 1 square foot of it that belongs to him. And that is what happens when you serve people. When you're willing to take decisions for the benefit of people. So when you go to Herbert's Beach now, don't just see it as a celebration, which it is. See it also as a manifestation of a vision come to life for the people of St. James and the people of Nevis, because that is now our land. Our land. And I say praise be to God for people with that kind of vision, people with that kind of commitment to this island and to our people. That is important. And we ought to cherish those people. We ought to recognize them, because these are the types of decisions that will benefit your grandchildren and your great-great-great-grandchildren. Those that are yet unborn, those that we may never see, will be able to go to Herbert's Beach, because that is now government property. The same way that we were able to get title for Bath Hotel. Many of you would be shocked that all these years we said Bath Hotel belonged to government, but we had no title for Bath Hotel. And when I became Premier, I said this had to be resolved. And do you know, when we tried to get title for Bath Hotel, some scoundrel showed up, and tried to make some argument. And we said no. And the judge agreed with us and granted the title. And so the people of Nevis now have their title, the Bath Hotel. These are, ladies and gentlemen, important things. It shows again a government that is thoughtful, that is working for you, not for itself. Because we've had examples of people who are only interested in benefiting themselves. But these are decisions that will benefit generations to come. In ensuring that we lock down the title and the ownership of some of these properties, which have had for years been in abeyance. That's the way you guarantee that the people of this island will have the benefit of this going forward in perpetuity, and that their children and their children's children will be able to point and say, this is ours. And that's important, because if you don't pay attention, if you're not thoughtful and sensible, you'll wake up one day and there's nothing that is ours. It will all be lost. The lines are open, 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. So we would certainly invite your calls for those who want to call in and be a part of this show this evening. I am hopeful, especially if the Honorable Eric Evelyn is out and he's listening, because I would like to hear from him what his views of Culturama 49 were. And from his vantage point of being a reveler on the street and being one of the masqueraders, the traditional masquerade, he was on the street with that, so that would be very useful. But certainly we are looking forward to your calls at the numbers 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. While we wait for the calls to come, let me move on to the issue of education. I would have, over the course of the past few days, met with the leadership, the Honorable Troy Liebert and his team in the Ministry of Education. And we all know that this is a time of year when certain changes and adjustments are made in terms of personnel, in terms of what we're doing at the various schools, in terms of some work that is undertaken at the various schools. And I think, to make the public appeal to our teachers, to our staff members, to our principals, to all of those who are involved and are hired by the government to serve. I want to emphasize that, to serve the people of Nevis in this capacity. I believe that some are of the mistaken view that they decide which school they will teach at, they decide which position they will hold. And I think that whilst, of course, we believe very strongly in having a cooperative approach, one where the staff member and the ministry are, for the most part, on the same page. We understand that's important for motivation. I think we should also appreciate that public servants are required to serve in any area of the public service that the government so determines. An area that matches their qualifications and that the government determines they can make a contribution. I hear some people, for example, say, oh, I teach at EPPS and me now move from there. No, that is not the way. If it is that there's a need at Ivor Walters or there's a need at St. James Primary, then you're called upon to satisfy that need, because your focus should be, how do I best serve the Ministry of Education and the department and, most importantly, the children of Nevis. I will take this call and come back to that. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Okay, that call is gone. Caller, please call back. So, the point about it is that we must understand what our role is. And our role, ladies and gentlemen, is to serve. When we are called upon to give of our best in whichever area, whichever school, whichever office, because there's only one public service in Nevis. And we need to understand that. And I think if we understand that, a lot of the concerns would evaporate. Let me go to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening. Now, I listened to you tonight, and I understand a lot of what you were saying. But I don't have to tell you what my name is, because you know who I am. I live on a piece of land here in Morningstar that my father bought from Johnny Howell 5.5 acres of it. And I was given a piece where I built my house. And somebody who has no authority at all came and built a road, pulled down my property, pull down the boundary and everything, right? Build a house. Them two person is dead. The two of them who don't is dead. Now I have not even division, but Guyana is fighting me for my property here. This matter was in court for so long, right? So long it's in court. I live here in Morningstar. The other side of the road is Church Ground. And I have even people from Church Ground opposite myself fighting me for my property here, destroying my property. I have big stone on my little porch near my bedroom here. Big stone. Eric came and see it. Carty came and see it. And I'm waiting for justice. And I can't seem to have any justice here. Today I was told it's because you live on your own and you are old. So I want to know what kind of Nevis and what kind of a control, whether police or government or who. What's going on here in Nevis? Because I am very confused. So I would like to be told whether, if people can just come in and take your property without buying it.
Well, caller, I think the answer to that is clear, that people cannot take your property without buying it. If you say you've involved lawyers and the matters before the court, then that is where these matters...
It's been going on a long time.
Well,
Court, it's been going on a long time, and I'm sick and tired. Okay. All my thing here, I have big stone, actually big stone up on my property.
So, caller, what would you want someone to do? If you're in the court and the court is handling the matter, what would you want someone to do?
It's too long.
So the court is taking too long, you say?
Yes, and I need my peace.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know that I can solve that problem for you. The Premier of Nevis doesn't have any authority to solve land disputes. That is a matter for the lawyers and for the court. And you have
but
taken...
lawyers are just taking money.
Well...
They're bleeding you dry and you cannot see any result at the... You know what I mean?
All right. Well, caller, I understand, but I'm telling you that you're putting something on my plate which is I can't handle, because there's nothing in authority that I have. I can't in any way, shape or form solve a dispute involving land or land ownership. That is a matter...
You can just come and throw stone on your way you live?
Well, that is not...
They may end up killing you for your own property.
Well, all of that is illegal, and that's what I'm saying. That you say that you have lawyers involved, they should be doing their job.
Exactly. Not just taking money.
Well,
I can call lawyers' name that I've paid a whole heap of money and I'm still waiting for my case in the court.
All right. Well, don't call their names. Call them and discuss it with them. And if they can't give you the justice that you're seeking...
We want to know what's going on here in Nevis that people can come and trample on people for their own property.
Yeah, well, all right. As I said, nothing is going on here in Nevis as far as I'm aware. You have a unique problem there. Your lawyers will have to resolve it, and the court will have to resolve it, okay?
Thank you.
All right. You're most welcome, and I'm terribly sorry that you're experiencing this, but there is nothing that the government can do. These are disputes, and any difficulties are between neighbors. These are matters for the court, for the lawyers to deal with. I'm hopeful that the situation doesn't escalate, but you say the police have come. Minister Eric Evelyn has come, and I'm hopeful that you can get this matter resolved once and for all and be done with it. So you do deserve your peace of mind, as we all do, and so I hope that this is resolved and resolved quickly. Let's go back to the phones and take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hello, good night, Mr. Brantley.
Good night to you.
Yeah, I have a case, not a case, a problem. You were talking about people who work for government, and some of us who work for government is looking answers, and we want to know when you're going to address the issue. We want to know what happened to those workers that do the job and sit down every day and don't do nothing. And every month they go and they get the salary, but they don't have to do nothing. But us, the other half, have to be working real hard. So we want to know when you're going to address that problem, and if the same thing going to happen September morning. because it is not fair for one half to be working out themselves hard and the other half is sitting down and nobody saying nothing or doing nothing to them for 2 years now.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think across the world, across Nevis, across the public sector, across the private sector, we have people who are not pulling their weight. What I would say to you is that the government has a structure to it. And the structure of the government is that there are people in charge of various areas of the government. You're right, I'm the Premier of Nevis, and I always say the buck stops with me. But I cannot control every facet of every department in Nevis. That is why we have at the schools head teachers and principals, deputy head teachers, deputy principals. We have Ministry of Education officials. We have education officers. We have a principal education officer. We have a permanent secretary. We have a minister. In Public Works, we have a similar setup: Director of Public Works, Permanent Secretary, Assistant Permanent Secretary, Minister. In Health, similar. Department heads, Assistant Permanent Secretary, Minister. What ought to happen is that if persons feel that colleagues are not doing their work, then the necessary report should be made to the supervisor. The supervisor should then look into that matter and take it up the chain, and so that that person can be spoken to or the necessary action taken if that person doesn't correct their behavior. But oftentimes what happens, caller, is that people call the Premier and they say to the Premier, oh, so-and-so not doing their work. And I ask the question then, well, all right, has this report been made to the supervisor, to the persons in charge of that department? Has it gone up to the ministry, to the permanent secretary, etc.? And 9 times out of 10, in fact 9.5 times out of 10, the answer is no. So a lot of times people call me and expect that I'm just going to do something because they say so. But that's not how the system works. I'm sure that you would appreciate that somebody could equally call in on the show and say that you aren't doing any work. That may not be true, but people can do that as well. So what we need to do is to try to ensure that the system works and that reports are made through the proper channels so that action can be taken. And I am hopeful when I say that those who occupy these positions in the proper channels will act when the time comes and there's a need to act, because many of them too appear to be reluctant to take action when it's necessary to do so. So, call, I hear you. I'm hopeful that all the workers who work for government will take their jobs seriously and will give the public an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And I hope that if and when people have to be moved or removed from the public service, that they will not complain, because they will know that they have not been working for the money that they're being paid. So I am hopeful that if you have this concern, you take it to the appropriate channels so that action can be taken. It is 10 minutes past the hour. Let me go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Okay, we've lost that caller. While we wait for the phone to call, to ring, I'm sorry, while we wait for callers to call, let me just take a moment to express condolences to the Thompson family. We have heard of the tragedy that happened in the Virgin Islands, where Laverne Libert Thompson was struck by a car in a terrible accident and lost her life. I have reached out privately, but I want now to say publicly my condolences to the Thompson family, to Tracy and Elizabeth, Sammy, to Enid, to Othniel, to the whole family there in the Virgin Islands, and to, of course, the family here in Nevis, the Thompson family there in Brown Hill, the Brown family by extension. They're all connected, all close, and so I would want to extend my condolences. I know Tracy in particular normally listens to the show, so Tracy, if you're listening, please convey my deep-seated and heartfelt condolences to the entire family and my sympathies to all of you. Please know that we are praying for you, and we are hopeful that our prayers will give you some comfort in this hour of bereavement. We understand that it wasn't a situation where somebody was sick, but that this is something that happened, by just suddenly. And I think that those are the deaths that are hardest to deal with, because somebody leaves and says they're going to the supermarket or they're going to the shop, you expect them to come back. So please accept my deep condolences from all of us here on the Mark, and it is our hope that you will be comforted in your hour of bereavement. Let me take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the Mark. Hello? Hello? Caller, are you there? Okay, this caller isn't there. Callers, please be patient with us. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. Just to advise the general public while we wait for the phones to ring, that this coming Sunday, the Concerned Citizens Movement will be having its much anticipated convention. It will be at NEPAC. We start the session at 2 p.m. when we have the caucus, and then at 4 p.m. we have the general session. We're inviting all of Nevis to come out. We're going to have quite a bit of activity, quite a bit of entertainment. We're going to have, some food on hand for those who are attending. We are hoping to have a very good time. So it was Sunday, 13th August, 4 p.m. is the general session, 2 p.m. is the caucus, and we have, a whole line of entertainment. Speedy, Deli Ranks, Regal Band, Chavanais, Synovia and Young Vibrations, Steel Orchestra. We have some speeches. We're going to try to keep it nice and jumpy. We want to celebrate. I think this party has a lot to celebrate. We want to, of course, introduce the new executive, and we have, I believe, a fun and packed agenda for the public to enjoy. And so we're inviting everyone to come out to the CCM convention. This is happening this Sunday at NEPAC. As I said, we have the caucus, so the closed session at 2 p.m. and then we have the open session at 4 p.m. And thereafter, we hope to have a very nice party where we dance the night away, we enjoy ourselves, we have some food, we have some drink in the courtyard. I think there's a lot to celebrate, and as a party, we have done so much under the long leadership of the Honorable Van Seymour of blessed memory. And then when he handed over to me, we have continued in that tradition of working hard for the benefit of the people of Nevis. And so we invite you to come out and be a part of that. We expect to have a wonderful, wonderful celebration on Sunday. The numbers again are 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Going back to the issue of education, I was indicating that we are in a process of revamping, revising, adjusting, as happens every year. I would want our teachers and our personnel in education to understand that we are trying our very best to put persons where we can get maximum impact, positive impact for the benefit of our students. That is really what it's about. And so the conversations are ongoing with the PEO and her team, the Principal Education Officer, who let me commend publicly, Ms. Zanella Claxton. She's really a fantastic public servant, and I want to give her public commendation. She's working as part of a team. She's done an excellent job there under the leadership of PS Kevin Barrett and, of course, Minister Troy Liebert. And she's the one who's having these discussions with the various individuals. But I just want individuals to know that they have our support. And what we're trying to do is to put people where we know they're going to have maximum impact, beneficial impact, positive impact for the benefit of our youth. Education is, as I said, not just a profession, it's a calling. You're shaping the minds of our youths for generations to come. That is what is important, and educators should see themselves in that light. So I certainly thank all educators and encourage them, please, to understand that we are really trying to extract the best that we can, looking at the talent that we have across the education spectrum to ensure that we have the best people in positions to move education in Nevis forward. It is indeed a noble calling. Let me go to the phones. We have 45 minutes left. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Premier.
Good evening to you.
I hope you enjoyed yourself and you didn't overdo it.
Well, I'm here today, so thank God I didn't overdo it.
Yes. I was a bit surprised because maybe everybody knocked out, worn out. Now today on Freedom, Carl Brown was making some complaints about the reception some persons from St. Kitts got in Nevis. He spoke one about the vending. You might have to hear it for yourself from the station. And he also spoke about certain charges at the port. I think he said those who, if you had a cargo or something, you paid $50 at the port. And at the port, if you didn't have any, you paid $25. And he said that was strange because in St. Kitts, you only paid $1. So is that a new policy? And who collects the money? The lady was collecting. Are they collecting for the boat? That's what I really want to ask. Are you aware of that?
Carl, I'm not aware of any charges that we have imposed. Of course, the ports in Nevis are operated by the Port Authority. That's run by a board. They don't run every decision by me as Premier, so I am not aware that they would have levied any charges. I do not know if the boats themselves would have levied charges for cargo. So I can't really answer that. I can undertake. I can undertake to find out, but I can't answer that because it's the first I'm hearing.
I found it strange myself. He said if you had things, if you had luggage or load, if you want to call it, you pay $50. So some had to pay $50, some pay $25. And he also spoke about the attitude of the Nevisians towards the Kittitians who came over and were trying to do some vending. He even spoke about, in one case, he was asked to move from a certain place by a police officer. You know, so he said they felt very bad because they didn't want. So I was wondering, like down here, people are asked to register to vend on the street. Was that a prerequisite in Nevis so that people will have known before they come, before they go over to try and sell and compete against the divisions, that they should have been registered?
As far as I know, caller, the registration process applies to all vendors who want to be a part of Culturama. All vendors who want to be a part of Culturama would have to register. That is my understanding. I know in the past we've had just one or two vendors who would come over from St. Kitts, but I've never seen any great number of persons because naturally I suppose the hassle of bringing goods and equipment and all that over, many of them haven't bothered. But I am not aware of any ill treatment meted out to persons from St. Kitts. I am not aware of any such. None of that has reached to my ears. Right? I do know Carl Brown, and that is why I'm saying.
If he's listening, maybe he could call in and express his concern.
Right, but I do not want this to be perceived as though there's some widespread issue because Kittitians come to Nevis Culturama every year and participate every year. And I have never ever heard. I have never heard of any difficulty. So if this is something new, I would want to know about it because nobody on Nevis has said any such thing to me.
You know?
Right? So I'm not aware of that.
I heard it and I said, I wonder if it is a policy.
But you shouldn't wonder if it's a policy to discriminate against
let me say good night to my relatives over there. Over in Cotton Ground.
Yes.
Yampi's sons. Good night, take care of yourself. All of the pain, the challenger. Over in Back Village and the Freeman them. Good night. Good night to Godwin Brown down in Sheriff Village. And all the other divisions. May God bless us and prosper us. All right then. So you can check into it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't need to check into any policy because this government has no policy of discriminating against our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts. To the contrary, you all would have heard me here and everywhere, year after year, day after day, week after week, month after month, talk about encouraging our people, encouraging Kittitians to come over to support Culturama, to support Mango Fest, to support all that's happening in Nevis, encouraging our Nevisians to go to St. Kitts, to support Carnival, Sugar Mass, to support Music Festival, to support White Sands, to support CPL Cricket. So caller, to ask if we have some policy, I believe, is really unfortunate, because you ought to know there's no such policy. If there was an isolated incident of somebody being told something in an unkind way, that does not amount to policy. We understand people. As far as I know, as I said, that vendors would usually have to register to vend for Culturama. In the past, I'm aware of maybe 1 or 2 vendors have come from St. Kitts, but nobody much. So I don't think that has ever been an issue. Why somebody suggesting that was an issue this year, I don't know. But our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts have always been welcomed to be a part of our Culturama festivities, as indeed we have always been welcome to be a part of activities on St. Kitts. I think that there's some out there who continue to engage in chatter and try to highlight and make things bigger than they are, to try and create some confusion as if, well, people are against each other. That is not the case. If my reports are correct, there were probably more Kittitians in the band jamming than there were Nivisions for Juve and of course for the activities here. So let us try to put those things to one side. If there's a problem isolated, let us address it. But to suggest that there's some policy, I believe, is unfortunate, because clearly there can be no such policy. It's 25 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. We continue to take your calls. Let me go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good night to the Honorable Mark Brantley, the Premier of Navies. Good night.
Good night to you, brother.
First, I always want to thank God for the Federation of St. Kitts Navies. Thank God for leaders, because especially good and great leaders who we elect to lead our country and to see things go right for people. You understand, Brother Mark?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
got to thank God.
Yes, indeed.
Now, I want to tell my good friend Sylvine that sometimes you got to be there and the scene to see things happening, and then you could call in and say things. Do not call in, and when people say things, you hear people say things. Because everybody get a story different. Now, Brother Mark, let me tell you something. I hear a lot of complaint. And they complain about the long jam. I hear nothing about, like, St. Kitts vendors went up there and they had a problem with them. I hear nothing about that. But the long jam, and a lot of complaints from the people of Nevis who is vending, saying the long jam going to Hobart Beach. And they got to think, when the band reach over in Hobart Beach, everybody over there gone over Hobart Beach, they got a food there to sell, and they cannot get the thing themselves. Because everybody gone over on the beach. So I think that what I say, they should make some changes. And I believe Nivijan, who got a problem, call in and say so. Do not complain. We like to complain too much, and this is what the program is all about. This is where Andy Mark and a different other radio talk show is all about, especially the Premier Nevis. This is the time with the world the concern about these things. People call it, complaining, say that, oh, they got a lot of food, this food, but consider how long they think themselves. When everybody going to hope with this long job. You know? So some of them say they go pack up the things and go over Hobart Beach because they go pay extra money to go get over there.
So, caller, let me
Yes.
just shed a little light.
Yeah.
The Culturama activity for years, the long jam has been part of Culturama for a long time. It used to be done by a band called Casanova. It is now being done by a band called Core. And it brings the jam from Gingerland to town.
Yeah.
There is, however, always bands in town as well. There is, for example, right there at what used to be well, it's now the Tourism Authority apron.
Yes.
In the heart of Charlestown, there's normally a band there playing. The bands are all around town. We would normally have, for example, Odyssey band coming from the other side, that is the windward side of the island, coming into town. And then we've added now in recent years the bands from St. Kitts, the big bands like Sugar Band and those who would be on the road as well. In fact, I'm told that Sugar Band might have been the band involved in that terrible accident. They were supposed to be coming from Long Point. There is there are hi-fis in town, there is activity in town. In fact, most people who are not in the jam itself will go to town and wait for the bands to come.
But Mark, you know that people like the band, people know in so much hurry for it, because they like jam.
I understand, but mostly people in the band ain't buying from vendors like that either, because they focus on jamming. The most you would sell is maybe a drink, and many of them in the band is part of groups, troops that have food and drink coming with the money. So I don't see how the long jam is affecting vendors in town.
Well,
the bands then, well, just
listen, Mark,
yes.
Listen to me. They're complaining about it. That is what.
Well, but I'm trying to say, because you're saying the long jam end up at Herbert's Beach, and I'm trying to correct you, because that is not the case. The long jam ends in town. All the jamming and the bands end in town. I believe that the jamming in town is stopped at midday. And that is when, sometime thereafter, those who want to go to Herbert's Beach, go to Herbert's Beach. Those who want to still hang out in town, that is their prerogative. They still hang out in town. And people go different places. But everybody, the whole idea behind Culturama, and this year we tried hard at it, is so that everybody could get a bite. We took Culturama out into the villages this year, into the various communities, to different shops, to different little restaurants. Everybody could get a bite. That is why we're trying to do it, Culturama, spread it across the island.
Attacking about the main August Juve.
Yes, when the Juve ends.
Listen, what I'm trying to understand with who also was complaining that sufficient action ain't in town to keep the people them.
But may I know what more action we could put in town, to be honest with you? If you got a band who's playing there by the apron for the tourism, you got the bands them coming into town. You have the hi-fis that are in town blasting music. You have all the food set up in town. You have the drinks set up in town. You have different people in town. I'm not sure what else we can do in town.
Anyway, Mark,
I hear you.
The tragic incident with the New Boys band, you know.
Yes.
But I believe that we got to get these truck. We got to get these Mack truck to her full band, because these tractors sometimes you got them put down, and you don't know the problem. You don't know the problem. Sometimes you just take them up and go full of band, and you don't know the problem. So I believe that these Mack truck, they should always use them to pull the band. Because let me tell you something, Brother Mark. When a tractor coming from mountain, right, we took the cane coming from mountain downhill. The car can't brakes, you know. The two car can't brakes, the brakes man helping the tractor with the brakes, you know. You know, and the amount of people who was on the trailer. Because I made to understand the tractor man tell them that he ain't going down that area because, you know, maybe that he feel like the brakes are whatever not good thing enough. The brakes are strong enough to control going down that area where the bandman, the people them tell him go. You know, but it's so sad to hear that what happened, and I'm glad we had the death. And I understand some people get hung up and so, but you know, we find that, you know.
Okay.
And I wish the New Boys band all the best, and Mr. Mention continue. And New Boys, as far as I can, so they're very bad lucky. Because some of them don't in the carnival, as soon as they start to play, the generator gone, is something wrong with them, so I don't know. But I mentioned, ask the father what really going on.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes New Boys don't here to put a mark, and some New Boys just start to jam, back and bam. Almost for the world, they park up one place, and everybody band start to jam. And so I don't know if they got a problem, wherever. But what I mentioned, you did the band, I would ask the father what really going on with the New Boys, and you know. Because all the West band them don't successfully go on and do the jamming and go on and do whatever. But it seems to me that New Boys got a problem. I don't know with this tragic incident up here. You understand? Anybody Mark, you have a wonderful night, man. Give somebody a chance. And these people are calling and raise your concern, man. Calling and raise your concern. You come and call it for the radio. All right then.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your call. Thank you as always for your contribution. I don't know about New Vibes Band and whether they're lucky or unlucky, but I am truly happy that there were no fatalities. I spoke to that earlier. And I'm really hopeful that we can move on, and that those who were injured, that those persons would have a speedy recovery. Caller, I was trying to say to you that the long jam doesn't end at Herbert's Beach. The long jam ends in Charlestown. All the jamming ends in Charlestown. It culminates in Charlestown. I have been going to Juve now for a lot of years. This year I didn't go, but for most of the years I have gone to Juve, and I have never seen that as an issue. The reality is that the long jam is a moving train of people moving towards town. And so vendors who are set up in town are going to be the ones who get the windfall when the bands reach. Along the way, it is difficult for vendors to set up, because in, say, 20 minutes, half an hour, the band will be past where you're set up. The only people I see selling on the side of the road along the band is people selling jelly and mango and those kind of things that people grab and go. So the people in town are the ones who are set up to benefit most when all the activity gets into town. But we have always had activity and music and entertainment in town, even as the long jam is making its way to town. So I am not quite understanding this concern that is being expressed. And if there are vendors out there who want to call in, because I would like to know what is so different about this year. And the Herbert's Beach affair starts after the jamming is over. So again, I'm not understanding why there's this comparison. We all know that notwithstanding the Herbert's Beach affair, which is in the St. James side of the island, many people stay in town because they want a lime in town, food is in town, drinks, music, they stay in town. The jamming might be over, but people still hang around in town to lime. So I am not understanding the concern, caller, but certainly if there are people out there with that concern, it's something that we need to look at again. I'm minded to look at it, but there was nothing different this year than all the other years that I've known Culturama. And the long jam is part of Culturama. How far back I went, Casanova. It's part of Culturama. It has been with us. It is one of those events, I think, which makes our Culturama unique, because we have this feature where there's miles of jamming coming into town and people gravitate to that. Even folks come up from St. Kitts and are part of that, because it is a big part of the Culturama festivities here on the island. We have 25 minutes left. We're taking your calls. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. Let's go straight back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
Mr. Brantley, all of them are making noise about what happened in town. Listen, right? The long jam start all the way up by Castle, wherever he starts. The two bands coming down the road. One the band get into an accident. Okay? Then the next band stayed there and waited, because they had ambulance and police and everything back and forth. So when they do reach downtown, it was close to 12. And then that the thing going to stop in town. So when people are bawling and make noise, they shouldn't make no noise, because this is the first Culturama anything happened like that. It's just because of the accident. Have a good evening.
Well, thank you for that, and that's why I'm asking people who know to call in, because I wasn't there. I can only speak to what I am accustomed to. Abernathy, you're out there. Eric, you're out there. People like you need to call in, because the public is asking questions, and I'm saying that these are legitimate questions that are being asked. If you can shed some light, because I have never known that that's a problem. I've never known the long jam. This caller is now suggesting that because of some mishaps, the people came into town later than normal. If that is the case, then perhaps some decision should have been taken to extend the close-off period in town. But I can't speak to it because I just don't have the facts. And that's why I'm saying these shows are useful, because we get to ventilate these things. And those who have the information and have the facts really should pick up the phone and call and let the public know, well, this is the position. I don't have the facts, callers, so I can't speak. I can only speak to what I'm accustomed to. And as I said, I am accustomed to the long jam reaching into town in good time, and that everybody's in town. And so I don't see that Herbert's Beach has really ever been a factor. The jamming is always cut off at a particular time, and that time, I believe, is midday, 12 o'clock. Some people cut off Juve in other islands. Juve ends much earlier because Juve is meant to be, an early morning thing as the sun rises. And that is, Juve, I think, means new day. I think it's French. And that's the idea that you go early in the morning. And so usually by 10 o'clock or so, things are ending at other places for Juve. But here we cut off at 12. Now, if there were reasons why bands got into town late, and that would have affected the vendors in town, and that's a different matter. But I am not aware of that. So we hope that somebody with information will call in. It can't be that all of them are sleeping, so hopefully somebody will call. We have about 22 minutes left, and we are taking your calls at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. We again remind the public that this Sunday we have the CCM convention happening at NEPAC. We have the private session starts at 2 and the public session starts at 4. All are invited to come out to the public session. We're going to have lots of entertainment, lots of food. We hope to turn it into a really good time where we can commix and commingle, as my good friend Reverend Percival used to say. And I believe that we need an opportunity for just people to come together. There's a lot that we must celebrate for this party, a lot of good that it has done, and it gives us an opportunity to reflect and to come together as a team and to test our readiness, because we must always be ready for an election which can come at any time. So the CCM will be having its convention this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. with the open session starting at 4, and we invite one and all to come to NEPAC, the Nevis Performing Arts Center, right there in Pinnes, and be a part of this very important convention this Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, we're taking your calls. We have 20 minutes left. 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Hey, man. Good night. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
How you enjoy your culture?
Culture was fine.
Okay. Man, if you realize something just now with Mr. Politics, didn't he tell me suddenly just now she should be someplace to hear, to see things for herself and whatnot, and he'd be complaining about people. Was he there?
Well, I don't know. But he did say that to her. He was talking, I thought he knew, because the way he was talking like he was there.
I don't think he was there, man.
Okay.
He said people was complaining to him too.
Okay. You have a point. I didn't even pick that up because the way he was
talking, I pick it up.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night.
Okay. Cheers. Let me go back to the phones. We have anybody else holding? Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello?
Hello, good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, you're on the mark. Go ahead. Could you move away from your radio or your computer?
Mr. Brantley?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
The lady from Brownhill who accustomed to sell in her spot. Yesterday she was just asking for a little space to go back with a vehicle to offload her stuff then. You understand me? This lady from St. Kitts was selling, but she had her cooler was blocking the lady from pushing back her vehicle to offload her stuff. And then they start to argue. And her daughter just throwing up a lot of bad word and saying, with the bad word way, she ain't gonna move, and all kind of things she getting on with. That is what happened. I was there because I just sell right there in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So when Carl Brown calling and saying what he wants, he must start the truth.
So it was just a situation.
Let me. Was asking for is a space to go back with her vehicle.
So it wasn't any anti-St. Kitts story then?
No.
I see. Because
no. It's the lady from Brantley who are accustomed to sell there on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yes.
She come with a vehicle, want this space to go back because the lady from St. Kitts had her cooler, was blocking her from pushing back. So she come out and say she want to offload her stuff. And then she daughter them getting on and abusing. Carl and all been abused. So why don't hush him out?
Okay. All right. Well, you see, that puts a different take on things. And, this is...
And I was there because I was there in the corner selling.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for that, caller. I appreciate it. Okay. I know that sometimes...
You must talk and say what happened. This is what happened.
All right. Well,
the lady was just want a little space to push back her vehicle to offload her stuff.
And the other lady from St. Kitts resisted?
Yeah, and she daughter them start to flare up with bad word and she was there saying, oh, I step on my spot and the lady said I want to just push back to upload my stuff.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's what happened yesterday.
Okay. Thank you very much, my dear. I appreciate it. And I think that, sometimes, as I said, you get different perspectives because, conflicts happen. We are humans, but a little cooperation, a little kind word sometimes turns away wrath and unnecessary tension. And so I'm happy that you have called in, and because this was being suggested by an earlier caller, that somehow this was some St. Kitts Nevis thing and that Kittitians were being treated badly over here. And I know that is never the case. So that is why I wanted clarification. Let me go back to the phones. We have somebody else holding. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good night, brother Mark.
Yes, good evening to you.
Well, if I wasn't there, how the people got to complain to me? I was there by a lady with a lot of soy fish. But to be truthful, I stay long because I had to come down, come work,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to come down, come work. I don't get to enjoy much a thing because I got to come down, come work at 4 o'clock, So, I want to tell my good friend there, if I wasn't there, how the people will complain to me and tell me these things? You understand? Well, I don't get to enjoy myself or enjoy myself because this is the incident within your boys' band.
Right.
The sugar band.
Right.
That's a part of my band.
That sound like you're a band,
Yeah, my band man, yeah, sugar band, my band man, yeah.
Okay. It's so and so for true.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, anyway, let's somebody get a chance before the thing up. So that's why I'm glad to know that. If I wasn't there, that nobody will complain to me that the scene, can you see,
All right, okay.
All right then,
Thank
you.
you. All right, we continue to take your calls. We have other callers waiting. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Good evening, caller, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
I just want to make a small correction to something that was said during the Culturama season, and this is just for the history books. During the night of the Teenage Queen pageant, the announcers made an error, so I just want to correct it. The first Teenage Queen was Dawn Marshall. The first runner-up in that same show was Jackie Moving from Law Street, and the second runner-up was Sandra Fredericks from Bath. In the second year of the show, Agnola Hendrickson was the queen. I can't remember who came first runner-up and second runner-up, but on the third year, Claudia Selkridge was from Gingerland, was the queen. Basically, the queen went to Gingerland 3 consecutive years, and then after that, there were some changes with the Culturama, with the teenage show and Carnival and stuff like that. So I just want to correct that for the history books.
When you say the teenage show, what are you talking about? The Talented Teen? When you say the teenage show, what teenage show? The Talented Teen?
The Talented Teen, yes.
Okay.
Yes. That show.
All right.
I'm not sure if in 1977 it was, but like I said, the correction needs to be made because the question may come up in the future on one of those quiz, and the record should be straightened to reflect. Everything goes on Google these days, so I just want to correct that.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, cool.
Okay, we continue to take your calls. Let's go back to the phones and take this call. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good night, Mr. Mark, and I hope you had a splendid Culturama.
I did indeed. Good evening to you.
Yes, what happened that, people must got to give to attention where it's supposed to be. If the lady told her, just move over, she saying, because I go over there, and I sell between people from over there, I never had a problem. But some people is so hostile and think, when I heard him today, I really heard him today and bashing and going on and say, oh, this police tell him movie and I was trying to say something, so I say, well, I know accustomed to go over there and sell. And Chovy, people, started to sell big time over there because a long time they say when it finished. After the jamming, they never know where to go to buy. People were hungry, because you don't jump out very little, you walk within your stomach, your breakfast and so. And that's how this thing come big, and I never heard about that. I glad the lady came on and try to, correct it and say what happened. Which in the think it's late. I don't know. We must talk to our children and say, they can't get no better. The mother would say, no. Let us make peace and shift the cooler and let the lady come in. And we all are one. What we want the rockatan. And the gentleman was on a while ago. He went Nevis at all. He went not on Eve, not of it. I mean on him say he went Nevis on me talk yesterday. He's something else to know. And got his story long from here to down long point. Yeah. So I'm glad everything, sorted out because it won't be fair. Because it's true, a lot of vendors now start to come up bigger and bigger from going over. I remember many times the boat loaded the hustler man with the 4 the morning shift 4 o'clock and they loaded going over. Some people go this Saturday night, then some go this Sunday night and then Monday 4 day. We go over there and everybody was happy to people and wanted this sell that go over to sell my boiled nuts. And what's not because after you drink it, you want a little salt to cool down the drinking and so. So I'm so glad it's doing nothing to make us feel uncomfortable. And next, the lady should speak to her daughter and say, make peace where peace supposed to be due. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, and thanks for the clarification. And you have been coming for years, and you know that there's no hostility in Nevis. There's none whatsoever. We welcome our brothers and sisters always. So thanks for that. Thanks for the clarification. We have about 12 minutes left. Do we have another call? Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
That's why I might hang up.
Hello. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello?
You're on the air. Caller? Hello?
Good evening, Mr. Sheriff.
Hey, good evening to you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to hear you. You back yet?
Yeah.
All right.
John 3 verse 16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I'm in the British Virgin Islands, right? I am a little late because I was at the Buccaneer Hotel for dinner.
All right.
I watched Culturama on YouTube. Everything went good. You have some people like who say, not Nakipa Nevis. We don't know where they go for, and down the end up and say, something I keep. You have a wonderful night, and I love you. Good night.
Okay. Thank you very much, and appreciate it. We have 10 minutes left. Let's continue to take some calls. Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello.
Good afternoon. Sorry, good evening, Mr. Premier Brantley.
Good evening, caller.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay, and I realize, I guess Mr. Honorable Evelyn must be tired because I saw him in his masquerade suit yesterday. Anyway, I want to ask a question. I was looking at the ZIZ Evening News, and I realized that the slogan competition for Culturama 50 is now open, but they did not specify. So I'm asking, will it be just for Nivisions or Kittitions and Nivisions?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that I would suggest you call the Culturama Secretariat in the morning to find out. I don't know.
Can you give me the number, please?
I don't know who the slogan competition is open to. You can call 469-5521 and ask for the Culturama Secretariat.
That's government.
That's government, yes.
And another thing, I'm just making a suggestion. Well, I already done start to put pen to paper, just in case if it's open. I just want to try something.
Okay.
And Mr. Politics, when he's calling in, he must get his facts. So he cannot complain or talk about Miss Henry because he's no better either. And just a suggestion for Culturama 50 next year, God's willing. I know normally Culturama is a division thing, but I know you may not like to hear this, but I know without Kittitions, there will be no Culturama. Because as you can see them, they come over in their hundreds or thousands. Whether it be the DJs, the big bands, the revelers, the paraders, and the spectators.
But how you say? But Carl, how you say it's a division thing when you just count out all them hundreds of revelers, paraders, big bands that just say come over?
Like meaning it came from Nevis, or it's a Nevis festival.
But originated, of course.
Yes. So, but you see, the reason for me saying that, because at a point, I can't remember what year, Nevisians used to make noise when Kittitian Calypsonians come over and take part in the Calypso competition. So that's why I said it, and it seems as though that they're keeping them out.
So there are two shows, the Calypso show and the Queen show. Those shows require the participants to be living in Nevis for at least 1 year prior to the show. It is not to keep out anybody, but that is a requirement, and there's good reason.
They used to make noise when Kittitians, especially when they win the crown, they used to make noise and go on back.
I'm only aware of one Kittitian winning the crown. 1 year.
When we have carnival, we don't stop anybody. Anybody could participate. Okay. So as I was saying, I suggest that since we are one federation, you make it a federation thing, invite Kittitians to come over and be part of the event, since it will be a memorable event.
Okay.
I'm just trying out my two.
All right, well, I understand your point, but perhaps if you...
it will go down in history, eh?
Perhaps if you understood the context, you might have a better appreciation as to why the rules are what they are. But I take your point, I understand it. I was trying to explain the context to you. The context is that Culturama was developed as a Nevisian festival to preserve Nevisian culture. That is the context. At some point, the festival was open in terms of participation in all of the shows to people from St. Kitts. And you're right that 1 year a Calypsonian from St. Kitts won. It led to a lot of chatter over here. And so we introduced the rule that, listen, we don't care whether you're from St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, wherever you're from, but you have to be resident of Nevis. And there's good reason for that. And that rule only applies to two shows, as far as I'm aware, the Queen show and the Calypso show. The reason for that is that the Queen from Nevis would normally go on to represent Nevis elsewhere, and that the King from Nevis would also go on to represent Nevis elsewhere. And we felt that that person must be acquainted with the island of Nevis. So that if somebody were to go to represent Nevis, let us say the Calypsonian goes to Anguilla, or the Queen goes to whatever show, Miss Mara of Caraval or Miss JC's or whatever it is they would go to, then that Queen is asked about Bath Hotel, that Queen is asked about something Nevisian, that they should be able to answer because they are familiar, they live here, and they are part of Nevis. That really was the thinking behind it. It wasn't to exclude Kittitians, because Kittitians are involved in every aspect of Culturama, other than the Queen show and the Calypso show.
You better believe that, and in their large numbers.
Well, but we are also involved in St. Kitts in our large numbers for Carnival and for Music Festival.
But we don't stop nobody. Once you're eligible, you can enter, you know.
Well, but
so anyway, as I said, I was just trying it out.
All right, I understand. But perhaps if you appreciate the difference between Carnival, which is a national carnival, and Culturama, which was intended to be a Nevisian festival unique to Nevis to celebrate Nevisian culture, it might make a difference in terms of your suggestion. The participation, you're absolutely correct. St. Kitts bands on the road, St. Kitts DJs, I mean, revelers, troops, vendors, there's no separation. The only rule that applies is relation to Calypso show and Queen show. Those are the only two, no other shows. The Carnival in St. Kitts is a national carnival, so anybody from anywhere in the nation can participate in that. And that's the difference that has been made. All right?
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good. Thank you very much. And as I said, just wanted to give you some context. Let's go back to the phones then. We have 5 minutes left. Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello.
Hello. Good morning. Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening. You're on the air.
I am calling. Well, I'm wishing everybody good night. I am calling in response to that Kittitian caller just now, who said that there will be no Culturama without Kittitians. Now, while we are happy to have the Kittitians over and we invite them over to take part in stuff, this statement that there will be no Culturama without Kitishans, I think it's a bit offensive, and it's something that should not be said. The Kitishans, I don't even know how to say it, so I sound diplomatic. They have this entitlement that everything Nevis people do, they have to be involved in it and they need to take over. But if we even try to enter a show in Sinkit, we automatically get disadvantaged. For example, that's just one example. So I don't like the idea of her or any other Kitishan saying that Nevis can't keep something unless Sinkit people are involved in it, because that is not the truth. And I just wanted to defend that. We welcome them over for Culturama. We are happy that they are here, but it is okay for Nevis to have something that Kitishans cannot enter because it is Nevis Culturama. They think it's Carnival, they think it's Nevis National Carnival. And I think a lot of them need to understand the difference between Nevis stuff and think it and Nevis stuff, and stop feeling entitled that they have to come over here and make us better, because that is not true. A lot of Kitishans didn't come up this year for a lot of the shows, and the shows still went on, and Carnival and Culturama still was good. So I really don't like that statement, and I just wanted to defend it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm not so sure that the caller meant to be offensive, though, because I understood what she was saying is that a lot of Kitishans participate. She was talking about the bands, the people on the road, etc. And perhaps what she was trying to say is that Culturama is made better and bigger because of the participation. That is why I turned around and said to her, well, so is Music Fest and Carnival made bigger and better because of the participation of divisions. I will be honest, I'm a big fan of the music festival. I've gone to every single one that has been kept over the last 25 years. And I bump into Nivisions all over. VIP, grounds, you name it. Nivisions are down there like peas. So the reality is that we support each other. And I sometimes try to avoid the discussion because I don't think it's helpful about whether music festival can't happen unless Nevis people come over, whether Culturama can't happen, because you're right. The reality is that we will have Culturama regardless, but we welcome the participation and we welcome the support that we get from our family, because they are our family in St. Kitts, and I'm sure Kitishans welcome the support that they get from their family in Nevis for shows over there. We support each other. You go to CPL, for example, and I mean the stands are full with Nevis people. You know, the Guyanese community, for example, resident in Nevis, they full up the place down there for cricket. That is how we should function as a country, rather than we continue to try and sort of get at each other. So I am hopeful that that's what the lady meant. I understand your sentiment, caller, but I hope that we can move forward and we see these festivals as trying to embrace everybody. As I explained, the two shows that are not even Nivision, you can't say they're Nivision, because I remember a couple of years ago a Dominican lady living here was a Calypsonian and she participated in the Calypso show. So the shows have a residency requirement. They say you should be resident in Nevis for at least a year if you want to participate. That is, as I know it, to be the rule, and I don't know that that has changed. So thank you for that, caller. We have one other call, or we are at the 10 o'clock hour. We are at the 10 o'clock hour. So caller, I don't think that we can take anything more. I would just want to end the show by encouraging one and all to come out to the CCM convention this Sunday at NEPAC. We start off the private events at 2, and then we go public at 4, and we invite one and all to be a part of that. Look forward to seeing you, everyone. We have a lot to celebrate. The Big Blue Machine will be at NEPAC this Sunday, and we look forward for you to come out. Put on something blue. Come and enjoy yourself. We have music, food, entertainment, and a good time with us being together, commixing and commingling right there at NEPAC. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily